I'm sorry, folks. I just gave such a long introduction, and then I gave such a long introduction, and just as I was about to add my guest, something went wrong. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to share the introduction bit of it is saved. I'm going to share it later on after the conversation is over. But just to give you a short introduction again about Snigdha. Snigdha, our guest today, is a personal finance blogger, and she works with big tech currently in Germany. And most of her content is to augment personal financial literacy, especially amongst women, because that she feels is going to empower them towards independence. So, without further ado, and before Instagram starts acting funny again, I'm going to add Snigdha.
Hello.
Hello. I'm
You
so
can.
sorry. I gave a long introduction
No,
and
that's
then
okay.
it suddenly got cut off. But I'm going to I'm going to share the introduction separately as well. Hi, Snigdha. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you? You can hear me right? Oh,
Yes, yes, can
okay,
hear you
cool.
perfectly well, but we can just see a little bit
Yeah,
of your face.
actually,
Yes.
so the thing is, I'm living in a hotel right now, so I'm just using a
Oh, yes.
makeshift phone holder-ish thing. So I am trying to do better, but yeah,
No,
I'll hold it like that. Okay.
is that comfortable for you? I want you to be as comfortable as possible, so it's okay if we can just see a little bit of your face.
Yeah. Is it
Yes.
any better? Okay, I'll go back. Oh, it's better
Yes,
now.
that's
Yeah.
perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi,
So yeah.
Snigdha. Thank you so
Hello.
much. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for
And
having me.
yes, and I've given a little bit of your introduction, of course, but please feel free to add anything that I've missed out, or you think that some information that's extremely essential that I've not mentioned, especially about your career trajectory, probably your
Right.
academia or your current work.
No, thank you. Whatever you said is like it defines me perfectly well. I just want to say that I started this as a passion project because I myself felt that because I started earning when I was 18. So because of having money, I had that kind of independence with me. So I felt there
Yeah,
is a lag thereof. And as you said,
yeah,
like not only restricted to women, where women have like a more lack, but yeah, a lot of people face this. So I wanted to
yes,
cover that. Yeah,
yes.
that's how I
And
started
yes,
this.
that's great. And of course, I wanted to invite you, of course, because of your depth of knowledge. And also, currently, you are working in Germany.
Yeah,
And I also think that you get a cross cultural context to
yeah,
finance and perception of finance. And of course, a gendered context also, because clearly, one of your motives is to help women, is to
yeah,
help women be literate in personal finance,
yeah,
because even if they're educated, the personal finance literacy is not as dominant as it should be. So you're also helping them there. So like a gendered perspective towards what wealth and spending means, and of course, your personal journey as well. So I think I want to start off with your personal journey because I am in that phase where I'm still figuring out my relationship with money. So
mm-hmm.
I just wanted to understand what your relationship with money has been and how it's changed through, the different phases of your life since you started actually earning since you were
Yeah,
18.
yeah. So my relationship with money in particular started way early. My
Yeah.
grandfather used to teach accounting and taxation in colleges after he retired. And growing up in my household, we have been really empowered as women. My mother completed her master's after she got married. My grandfather was very supportive of that, everything. So he used to teach me, and he used to teach me things like budgeting way early in my life. So I used to
Okay.
live with them, and I used to make the budget for their medicines. Like all of our grandparents go through these medications because not a thing to joke about, but all of our grandparents are somehow diabetic or have heart diseases. So yeah, I used to get
I'm a
them
bit
monthly.
guilty for laughing at that, but that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I used to get their monthly medicines, and I used to make a budget out of it. Like, okay, this is the quantity and this is the price per thing, and this is what they'll cost. It will cost them. And there is actually where whole my budgeting thing started. I have been too much into making budgets and making, okay, this is going to be my expense for the month, and this is going to be what I project is going to get out of my bank account. So yeah, that is where actually my relationship with money started. Gradually, when I grew up and I started
Hmm.
earning money, I realized that okay, I always was good with budgeting. I used to get the best deals. My friends used to call me Munimji when I was in school. So I used to get the best deal and everything, but I was not really good at saving and investing. So gradually when I grew up, I started focusing on that as well. And I think that has been my journey with money.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
and I think I'm still figuring that out. I don't know why. I'm like,
Which is perfectly fine. Which is perfectly fine. I'll tell you that I work in finance, right? All my friends, male, female, whatever, they are working in finance. The ones they are working in finance are not good at money, managing their money at all. So that's okay. You're doing
oh
good.
yeah. So I shouldn't be feeling out of
Yeah.
place as much. So,
Yeah.
of course, that's because your personal journey with money and with wealth in general, right? But do you think, and of course, this is either could be a learned perspective or a
Mhm.
personal perspective as well, that do you think different cultures have different perspectives about wealth and spending as well?
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not go too far right now. I'll give a far perspective also, but let's just see a comparison between. I grew up in Jaipur, so let's see a comparison between Delhi and Jaipur. And Jaipur people have a lot of money. Like you won't see that money just, all showy. They have their money parked in real estate, investments, and everything. They invest their money where they get the best returns out of it. Whereas when you come to Delhi, you'll see that money for sure. Like they are
Hmm.
too much into show business. They will be parading their money that okay, I am rich. See, I am rich. Jaipur people won't do
Hmm.
that. They will try to like protect their money in the sense that they don't want to show you that they are that rich. Whereas I know that for a fact that Jaipur people are rich. So yeah, there is a cultural difference just between 300 kilometers. So there is
Correct.
definitely a cultural difference between countries. For example,
Yeah.
let's take a USA. USA is a heavily credit based economy. Like they take out loans for everything. We usually don't do that. One, because
Yeah.
our inflation rates are so high, so the interest rates are higher. But yeah,
Okay.
if you see like a US based economy, they depend on credit. They don't really realize that, okay, I'm taking a credit right now, but I need to pay this back later. Whereas
Hmm.
right now I'm
Hmm.
coming to Germany and it's really different here. They don't believe in
Okay.
credit cards at all. They
Yeah.
don't really depend on credit cards. They are like, I have this money and I'm going to use that money right now. I'm not spending
Hmm.
anything beyond this, and this is what I earn. And even the credit card system here is like you have to give them your bank details, and once you whatever amount you use in your credit card, they'll just take out all that money in the next month. So you can only use the money you have. Like you cannot depend on
Hmm.
credit cards. So yeah, I have seen four cultures right now, like I just
Hmm.
mentioned, and there is a
Yeah.
lot of difference in all these four cultures, right? So
Yes.
definitely I believe this, that the way you grow up, the way you spend your time, the people you spend your time with really drive your influence with money.
Yes.
So when I
Yes.
saw, yeah, so go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
So I saw a lot of friends going out of Jaipur once they entered to college, and I too
Mm-hmm.
left Jaipur after I started my college, and I saw the difference coming in those people as well when they went out, because
Yeah.
they were influenced by their uh, whatever,
Surroundings and their
yeah,
environment.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, definitely. I think because India is such a relationship-driven country,
mm-hmm.
and in places like Delhi, where preserving a relationship or being accepted in a crowd could possibly mean, or being accepted in a group could possibly mean owning a certain kind of a car.
That's
So
true.
it makes probably cultural sense there, as
That's true.
opposed to in Jaipur, which maybe that kind of clout is not necessary in
Yeah.
order to be accepted. It's a different kind of relationship that drives the people. over there
Yeah,
to feel like a community.
yeah, that's true. You mentioned a very good point here that people try all of these things to get accepted, and
Yeah.
we need to normalize that. Okay, this is my limit, and this is what I'm ready to spend. I cannot go beyond this. But people
Hmm.
usually, especially young adults who are just coming to big city. I come from a small town, so I don't. I can say that coming to big cities, and they try to fit in the sense that okay, maybe if I spend here, I'll make friends. I'll make good friends out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and you gave a very interesting example about USA and how credit dependent they are
Mm-hmm.
as compared to India, which is not as much. Do you, I don't know if this is within the scope of your knowledge, but uh, aren't Indians supposed to be bigger, have bigger risk appetites compared to people from the United States? Is it that our informal economy or the informal culture of borrowing money is much larger as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to USA, which probably is part more formal in that sense, and that's why they borrow more, and there's more credit that's taken there as
Yeah.
compared to India. That can be also one of the things, is my assumption.
So the thing with us is that usually uh, when it comes to risk taking, I think we don't take so much risk. See,
No?
you'll realize that I think so because you won't see as many people risking their uh, day jobs to start up, right? Like create a startup, for example. Like it's a small example.
Hmm.
Like they
Hmm.
won't. Wherein a place like a USA, everyone is an entrepreneur these days, right? Apart from that,
Hmm.
this is like a small example, but also we don't take out loans as often from a banking industry that you just mentioned, like
Correct.
an
It's
informal sector.
yeah.
I do agree that informal sector here is big, and the informal sector is usually gives out a loan at a very cheap rate. This is also a reason that people go for an informal sector, but I don't
Yeah.
think that they go for those loans to buy like an iPhone or
Hmm.
buy anything for the house. Whereas in a economy like USA, what they do is that they are literally renting everything. They are getting phones on EMI, like the contract thing that works there, right? They
Yeah.
pay a monthly thing for their whatever. And so that's not happening in India as often as it's happening in the USA. Although, yeah,
Yes.
big
And it's
cities, in the big cities, still it's developing, especially like the big four cities and the metro cities, because the credit cards are more accessible and they give you a lot of offers, so people tend to buy it. But when you go into smaller cities, it's still not a thing. Although we are growing as a digital economy, but not so much as a
hmm.
credit economy. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. And yeah, there's that other point of that you mentioned, that people in the United States would probably spend that loan money on an iPhone or something else,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think we are less indulgent in that
Mm-hmm.
sense
Yeah.
as compared to these kind of developed economies. And that I'm getting a bit off the tangent, but
That's okay.
uh, I think that lack of indulgence could also be that we come from a scarcity thinking too.
True.
I don't want
True.
to speak for everybody in India. I
Yeah.
think India is a large country and there
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
so much disparity. What
Exactly.
scarcity mindset means to me is not
Exactly.
going to be the same for,
The-
who doesn't come from the same privilege that I do. But still, there's some
Definitely.
kind of scarcity mentality.
True.
Yeah.
True. Like whatever I totally agree with this because there's a difference in mindset between my friends and me who grew up in the same areas, went to the same school, went to the same kind of the same universities and everything. There is a
Hmm.
difference between because we had different households, right? We saw our parents doing different struggles. So my thing comes from where my parents struggle were, and I try to
Yeah.
like obviously my scarcity mentality is way different than what a friend who comes from an entrepreneurial background sees in his life. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. And yeah, I mean, talking about the differences in cultures, I think one big part of our culture is definitely gender.
Yeah.
I think people usually ignore that. They only assume national cultures to be a huge part of the cultural conversation. But yes, men and women and people who don't identify with any of the genders are also a big, huge part of
Mhm.
the economy and the idea of wealth creation in a country. And now, for this purpose of this conversation, let's just assume men and women.
Mhm.
Uh, like you started your blogs specifically with the motivation, like I mentioned, that women become more financially literate. Like,
Mhm.
do you think there's a difference in, especially now, considering, we have so much access to information and we have amazing, content creators like you who are giving access to that kind of information. Do you think that men and women think about money differently?
Yes, and this is not something that is just based on my thought process or my individual thing. I've gone
Okay.
through a lot of statistics in this regard, and whether it's national or like international statistics, where although personal finance in general has a very low percentage of uh, a common thing between a normal individual, but it's usually higher in men than compared to women. Like a 35% men say they are comfortable, and this is like this is I think a Bloomberg or a SAP source. I'm not sure, but I remember
Okay.
going through one of these, and like men say that they are 35% of men say they are comfortable with personal finances, whereas only 28 to 30% women say that they are comfortable, and this comes from people who are working and in usually in the age group of 24 to like 35ish, so who
Okay.
have just started their careers and just trying to thrive and whatever. But I also give you an example of like a household. Like my mother used to work when I was growing up, but still she doesn't know anything about where our money is invested. She doesn't know anything about it. So I don't I all obviously this is different for every household. But even though I come from a background where my mother was working, I never saw her being financially literate in the sense that she doesn't know where our money is invested. She wouldn't know that.
Hmm. Hmm.
All the maximum, the most craziest investment she would have done is create a FD. Like that's it.
Yeah.
That's all. My parents didn't have a SIP or investment in mutual fund or anything like that because
Hmm.
they never thought that this is important. And
Yeah.
oh yeah, so and despite the fact that my mother had an access and she had the tools to learn about these things, still she lagged behind. So I feel that there is a common thing. Although I feel a lot of my friends my age are doing way better than our parents did, but still there is a gap between genders. And if it's if it is a gap, if there is a gap between families who have been like supportive towards women, so I can just imagine about families who are not so supportive about women working. So I feel there is a gap.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And since I've written a children's book, I was going through a lot of research papers about why this could be. I completely agree with you there.
Mhm.
Why is that there is a difference in the way men and women firstly perceive wealth or
Mhm.
perceive personal finances. It's or why there are not as many women from Indian women specifically that are
Mhm.
participating in the labor workforce.
Yeah.
You know, in spite of being educated, and
Yeah.
I think it has to do with childhood conditioning.
Yeah.
I think that was I was never spoken to about money
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
opposed
True.
to my brother
Mhm.
who's also interested. I don't know where that interest sparks from. Is it
Mhm.
because the conversations with him were in a certain way? Was it that he was only exposed to the kind of content and people and information that pushed him towards the direction of being financially literate? But those kind of conversations were not had with me as I was growing up. And I think this is another thing with some cultures is I'm speaking from a bias and from an Indian perspective, is that
Mhm.
talking about money is bad in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
It's just everything just turns so awkward when
So
you're
I
talking about money. I don't know what is it. Is it compared to shame or
But
I don't know.
like you mentioned about your brother having more interest, I think I'm. again, I might be wrong, and it might come from a place of a limited perspective, but
Mm.
it also has a lot to do with representation. Like when you see a CNN market or a whatever going on at the background, which maybe your father watches or maybe your brother watches, you never see a woman up there. You don't. Like,
Mm.
you don't. And still, I mean, today there might be like a woman or two, but it comes from representation. That's true. You
True.
you
True.
feel that someone like me is there, so I might listen to that person. Like it's
Yeah.
it's like a it's like a thing, yeah. I don't know how to put it
Definitely
anywhere better. But
better.
I
It's
think
a yeah.
representation, yeah, I think it's a big thing.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I completely agree there. And I think this is men and women, and this is a lot of our personal context as well.
Yeah.
But then going beyond that, like from a very macro perspective,
Mm-hmm.
do you think a country's culture is associated with that country's wealth? Just to
Um,
give you an example, like in my introduction that
you talked about
went
Japan, yeah,
away. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I
I
spoke
heard that.
about Japan. Like
Yeah.
Karl Marx and Adam Smith, they said that individualistic countries that are self-serving,
Mm-hmm.
or countries that, basically started the Industrial Revolution were mostly individualistic countries, are countries that are more prone to economic growth as compared to relationship or community or family or
Mm-hmm.
collective countries. But then that got proved wrong because of Japan,
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
major manufacturing hub as well, or
Yeah.
even China for that matter, very relationship driven.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
And
they're
again,
very dated ideas.
China is like the China has like the second largest number of billionaires in the world. So again,
Yes.
I think every country has a share of poor, and uh, it's not like Western countries don't have homeless people or poor people who are not doing good in life in that sense. But I think that's a lot like the circumstances of individuals who have gone through different things. Some people have, like, let's take Ukraine war for example, and people have left Ukraine war right now, and they have left their homes, they have left their lives, and what where they end up right now is not something that is in their hands, right? They are in their social strata, their economic thing is not dependent on them at all. They're trying to navigate, like, they are not getting those opportunities because something happened in their country which led them to be here. So I think that's not really dependent on the wealth structure of a country, doesn't really depend on a country's culture, I think. But
Mm.
yeah, the thinking towards wealth, how they approach wealth, how they approach money is actually largely dependent on the culture they grew up in. Like for us,
Yeah.
for example, we don't have so much dignity for labor. We don't, and it's like a very hard truth. But when we see Western countries in comparison, people don't think any job is small, which should be the case. Like, you should not be
Mm.
looking at person from the job perspective, that that person is trying to make ends meet, that person is trying to make money for themselves. So that, I think that's where our cultural upbringing really impacts. Although we are changing, but that
Mm.
change will take a lot of time, because maybe our generation is way better than our parents' generation was in this sense, that
Mm.
we are more welcoming towards different labors, but it's still it's still different than what is there in the Western world.
Yeah, because yes, for this even I don't have a definitive answer, and I'm reading all
Yeah,
of these papers, I'm reading all of these economists, and they're just such varying ideas. Yes,
yeah.
the idea of, like I mentioned, social capital that came in 1993, where
Hmm.
actually, human capital was um, kind of mentioned side by side with the idea of economy.
Yeah.
It's not purely based on wealth and numbers. But again, there's no definitive answer
No.
because there are such diverse cultures that, or even similar cultures that have such diverse economies.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? For example, Costa Rica and Guatemala, they're
Mm-hmm.
very close economically, they're very
Mm-hmm.
close geographically. They kind of had the same advantages, you know. And when a lot of coffee started going from Europe, from these South American countries like Costa Rica and Guatemala into Europe, um, Costa Rica ended up doing better compared to Guatemala
Mm-hmm.
because it was because of the relationship between the government and its society.
Actually, and there are a lot of other things as well that impact those relationships, right? Like they are,
Yes.
they also went through like a lot of things with like US, and that also really impacts how
Okay.
they are doing
Yeah.
there. So
Mhm.
definitely, only the culture cannot really define the wealth structure, is what I would
Yes.
say. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. But I think now, especially in India, is what I'm seeing that there is a huge shift in the way I think that happened post liberalization only. There's a huge
Hmm.
shift in how we are looking at wealth, and
Yeah.
the market has opened up. People are investing, like
Yeah.
because of platforms such as Zero Dhatu,
Yeah.
people are looking at wealth building more than just real estate. I
Yeah.
think that
That's
was a
true.
very traditional way of looking at wealth creation कि घर बांध लेते एक investment
Exactly.
हो जाएगी. Now you're going more beyond that, and there are founders like Kunal Shah who say they don't own any property, which
Hmm.
I still don't understand. I don't think property is a depreciating asset. I don't know what is this new age thinking of not investing in a house.
So I read this report by Robert Schiller. He's like an US economist. He teaches at Yale, and he has like a Schiller index thingy, wherein after the 2008 he did a lot of research to really understand the housing market and real estate market in particular. So and this is his perspective. I do agree with him on some contest. The thing is, there is not actually any. There are two three things, but one of it which is that there is not really any like a theory that the land or the housing thing or apartments or whatever your fixed asset is will never depreciate. First is that. Secondly, when you take up a loan in particular to buy a house, you end up paying like double than the price of the house because you pay a huge amount of interest over the year of 20 or 25 years for whichever tenure you take the loan in that time. There are other investments that you can do. You can put your money away in different things. But I feel that although I agree with him on these 2 points, but I feel that there should be like a place you call your home, right? Like there should be a place, and it's just more than the economical value. There should be an emotional value attached to it as well. So I feel
Hmm.
that's completely missing in his research. But he also claims that
How
he's a
could you
big.
expect that from an economist? How dare you expect that? Feeling attached to something I pay for? Absolutely not.
That's true, yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so
what there's a thinking. I think this is a very millennial or a boomer thing. I don't know which generation I fall in. I know I'm a millennial by age,
age.
but then I sometimes by age I'm a millennial, but sometimes I ask questions that of a boomer.
Yeah.
And do you think because I think millennials were supposed to be the most debt-ridden generation
Yeah.
compared to all of the generations.
Yeah.
I have taken a student loan, so I know, I
Okay.
know that pinches me.
Yeah.
Um, but do you think, and in your experience, that Gen Z is now becoming more conservative about money? That they're going back into that Gen X or Boomer mindset because they
Mhm.
are seeing and learning from their millennials that
Okay. So
can't look at money this way.
here is the funny thing, okay? Especially during the pandemic area, one thing that became very easy compared to 2018 and 2020, I'll take this. 2018 is when I joined American Express and I wanted to start my SIP, and it was a tedious thing to do. I had to sign like 10 papers and I had to attach this document, that document, otherwise my request will be rejected, whatever. Today, I can go onto XYZ app. I can just upload my documents and start my investing like this. And it takes me about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. So I think one thing was this, that it became very easy. And secondly, during the pandemic, a lot of a lot of famous bloggers also started preaching SIP start kar lo, like park your
Hmm.
pocket money there. So I know 16-year-olds who are investing right now, and which is a good thing if they do it like after telling their parents. And I don't really tell them to like go on tips or anything. Do your own research, but whatever. But there are 16-year-olds who are investing their money. And on one hand, I also know a couple of Gen Z who are my cousins who have just started working, and they're like, "Let me YOLO this money. We are not going to live forever." So I see two type of people here, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of that, the lot of YOLOing their money comes with the age also. I think 4 years ago, I also thought the same way. I was like, I'll earn. I have just started. I'm going to earn throughout the next 60 years. I'm going to earn. Let me spend this money. But I think that changed gradually, and I thought, oh, and now I think I should have started 4 years ago that
Yeah.
way.
And- But yeah, I think what you're saying is right. That now there is more access to information of what can be done with the
Mm-hmm.
500 rupees, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to a millennial having 500 rupees and
Yeah.
spending it on something completely bizarre. And I think the millennial generation was also very self-centered. I
Yeah.
keep repeating that we are the generation who created Instagram, which was the most individualistic platform that you could create, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, the same millennials, I'm assuming you're a millennial too,
Yeah. Yeah.
now now are creating content for Gen Z to avoid that kind of self-indulgent bullshit
Yeah.
that has yes, I could look at it as something like a generation has taken a huge risk, a
Mm-hmm.
generation has invested in themselves, but there's also a lot of stupid decisions that have come out of that. And I think with Gen Z, there's also new ways in which they look at money. For
Yeah.
example,
Definitely.
crypto, and because of access of information and platforms, I think that accessibility has changed their relationship with money too, for sure.
Yeah, in the US, like the app Robinhood, which is pretty famous there. And I don't know if you know about this, but like it was mid 2021 or 2022 end when they couple of 16-year-old really took down hedge funds. What they did was they
I
started
remember.
buying. Okay, they started buying, and they were 16-year-olds. They were still in school. They started buying this stock on which hedge funds had betted that this stock will go broke. And they started buying it. So now hedge funds are losing money. And they literally, they made like 3 billion of losses, the hedge funds, because of these 16-year-olds. So I think they are more intelligent than we were when we were 16.
Let's say, can we, this is getting competitive now. Can we just call them more informed?
Yeah. Okay.
More
Okay.
intelligent.
Okay. Yeah.
Just for my sake.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I mean, we went on many tangents, of course. I
Mhm.
decided this to be a 30 minutes, but I think the conversation got really interesting. But what I do is usually when I end most of my conversations, I end with this question because we are in a period of change, everybody. Yeah.
Mhm.
So if there's one thing, Snigdha, that you would want to change, either within yourself or outside of yourself, what would it be and why?
Uh, the thing is that I feel that I am pretty anxious about things. Like a little thing
Yeah.
will make my tummy go, "Ugh." And I
It's a
feel
millennial life, Snigdha.
I feel
Not taking it away from you,
that
but
is
yeah, I know what
that is something I really want to work on, because when it comes to money, when it comes like anything in that regard, or whatever I'm going through, I'll get all nervous and all tingly, and I'll be like, but okay, I want to work on myself in that regard, and I think a lot of people feel that they have made money mistakes, and I want to say that it's okay. Like everyone makes money mistakes. I have made too. I'm not like an expert or anything. I
Hmm.
just started learning about it. Just because I work in finance doesn't mean that I knew all of these things already. I studied them out of my curriculum also. So that's completely fine, is what I feel. And just because you made a mistake, you cannot get better. That's not the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yes, Snigdha, before we go, where can my audience find you? There's your audience. Yes, they know you. They know everything about you. But for people who will be watching this later on as well, where can they find you and your work?
Okay,
If
so
you could share.
right now, since I've been moving and everything, so I post a little lesser on Instagram, but usually I'm more active on Instagram. I also have a website of which the link is in my bio, and I
Okay.
usually on that website I usually post free so Excel workbooks and everything that you can use for your personal finances. Like
Wow.
I have an investment calculator, I have a loan repayment calculator that you can find on my bio or link, and you can download it if you have a loan and you have like a repay date in your mind that I want to pay this back by this date. You can enter it and it will show you how much money you need to pay every month to like. So I
You
have been,
made Excel?
yeah,
Oh,
it,
brilliant.
I made those on Excel. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I still have screenshots attached on everything how to use them, so it can be helpful for people. Yeah,
Ah, so I
and it's
think it's going to be
completely
really helpful.
yeah, it's not, and it's completely free, so no strings attached. You can just
Okay.
you don't need to follow me
Perfect.
or sign up or anything. So that's okay.
This is free mal. But thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing. Like, giving out free content like that, which is actually useful, which is actually applicable, is brilliant. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for doing the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for giving me your time today. I know it's a Sunday and you
No, that's
decided to
okay.
spend it with me having a conversation. So I'm very, very grateful for that, Snigdha. Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me. Have
Thank
a good
you.
day.
Bye.
Bye.